fat people are not going to make them money, and that's the truth. So why would they create art with them in it? On July 13th, 2023, singer, songwriter, actor, and former YouTuber Troye Sivan released Rush, which was the first single off of his third studio album, Something to Give Each Other. Basically, the song is a bop. Like, the girls, the gays, and the theys ate it up, including me. Rush debuted at number 77 on the Billboard Hot 100, sold a bunch of copies when it first released, and had millions of streams when it came out. Australian pop singer told British GQ that he had spent the last few years discovering his love for people, community, and sex. And most importantly, that he loved to party. Now, Sivan's love for people and community and like partying and stuff like that, I think was showcased brilliantly throughout the song itself, but really throughout the Rush music video entirely. Like, I really think it was showcased brilliantly there. I feel like the premise of the Rush music video was to celebrate queer liberation and resilience through the underground queer party culture scene. I would argue that Rush is Sivan's first attempt at creating his version of a queer utopia through his art. The video was simply opulent. There seemed to be an abundance of drinks, music, drugs, freedom, a whole lot of fun, people of all walks of life, creed, and color, just no fat people, like nowhere in sight. Like, I think my sis in like the opening clip, she was a little thick. She had a little something on her, but that was kind of it. The lack of body diversity was something that the internet criticized Sivan for during the initial buzz of the song's release. A Rolling Stone staffer said, quote, on Twitter, "It seems like a case study on how white gays choose to view queer people as a whole. There's not a single fat person in the entire video, just white twinks and chiseled bodies." Yikes. Sivan addressed such criticisms in July in a Billboard interview around the release of the song, saying, quote, "I definitely hear the critique. To be honest, it wasn't a thought that we had. We obviously weren't saying we want to have one specific type of person in the video. We just made the video and there wasn't a ton of thought put behind that." Let's put a pin in that quote and we'll come back to it. Now, let me enter this conversation with saying I am a fan of Sivan, and I have been for many years. I consider myself to be an old head on YouTube. I've been on the platform for over half of my life, watching anything from vlogs to music videos, book reviews, makeup tutorials, DIY, ASMR, coming out videos. Like, I've literally watched anything. And I remember Sivan being one of the first openly queer content creators I used to watch when I was younger. Like, I remember when the Fault in Our Stars single dropped. That was on like the EP. Like, that's how far back I go. All of that is to say, don't let the title fool you. I'm not a Troye hater by no means. Troye isn't the only person or the only artist that doesn't really include fat people into their work or their music videos. Rush just happens to be the video that I decided to analyze in this essay. Also, I'm not arguing that fat people need to be in the Rush music video, nor do I think they need to be in any of the works that he does in a performative like way. But I do think that this opens up a really interesting conversation about anti-fatness and fat phobia and fat representation in popular culture. And of course, my own lived experiences as a Black, fat, queer person are going to color my feelings around this topic. Now, I don't know if anyone else does this, but it's hard for me to watch a video without hearing the song first. Now, this is because I feel like in a past life or somewhere in the Spideyverse, I'm a music video director. And if I watch a video and it doesn't match the video that I have in my head from listening to the song originally, it's hard for me to like enjoy and like watch the video. Like, I think about like what a missed opportunity it was for them to not have me like on set. Like, what were they doing? So when I got the Apple Music and YouTube notification that the Rush music video was out, you know, I had to go listen to it first, and I was like pleasantly gagged. One, I was gagged because I basically had seen Troye grow into an adult because of like being a fan and like watching him for so long. And we're close in age. And it was like, whoa, he's like outside. Like the video, I was like, oh my God, she got her boots on and hitting the pavement. Of course, there's the whole thing about seeing one of like a child star that you used to watch grow up into an adult and having that parasocial relationship because of like the YouTube videos and that kind of content. And like, I was like seeing young Troye now be like the new hot twink on the block. I used to see him do the Chubby Bunny challenge back in the day. So it was like crazy to watch. Secondly, I was gagged because I had spent the last year of my life living in Los Angeles and bouncing around West Hollywood with my friends. And I knew the song was gonna go up in the clubs. And I had just recently moved from Los Angeles when it came out. And I was like, dang, like, I would have been in the clubs, you know? Drop it low for Jesus. Now, I thought the song was really fun and everything I wanted to hear at the time when it came out. The production was on another level. I just remember like running around like my mom's basement when I had moved and like sending the song to my friends that also listened to Troye, and we were just all having a really good time. Then the perfect thing happened where the video in my head matched perfectly with the video that they actually like put out. And like I said, I had spent like the last year and a half like traveling. I lived in Orlando, and that's where I went to one of my first queer bars ever. And then, you know, moved to Los Angeles and was having a really good time there. And I'd been to a lot of events and parties that kind of looked similar or had like a similar vibe to what Rush was and the music video was depicting. So I was just like having a really good time with it. And I turned 21 during the height of the pandemic a couple of years ago. And it was during my like junior year of college. And I basically spent most of like my early 20s in lockdown and Zoom meetings. I was taking summer classes and like writing papers in my mom's basement when I was supposed to be like studying abroad in Italy. And during that really rough time, I used to daydream about like being in queer spaces that looked like the ones that were depicted in the Rush music video. Watching that video made me remember all of those daydreams that I used to have about moving to a big city and making new queer friends and staying out all night and having fun. And I really made some of that like a reality for myself. This is Hassan from the future, and I need to put this iPad somewhere. So look at my trash can. But this is Hassan from the future recording this video. Oh my God, everything's happening. My mic is not connected. Let me go connect the mic so y'all can hear me better. I didn't script this part. I guess I should have, but I'm not. I think what also came up in watching Rush and my initial reactions, especially from like back when it first came out in July, was the feeling of like jealousy that really was apparent for me. And watching it like months after it's come out and like scripting this video and like thinking about, you know, fat representation and all the other stuff, I think that there's a really like honest part of like, I also just don't think I would ever really be enough to be in those settings. And there's a true feeling of like jealousy that does come from like the fact that you're not the girl to be there. And I think that that's also something that fueled me wanting to like learn more about, you know, where that even like stems from within myself and just like within other people. But that's also another part of like my reactions and feelings around the video is like, I don't know if I could ever be enough to be in those like settings. And that doesn't have anything to do with Troye or like, but it's the truth. Anyways, back to the video. I tweeted about the song and watched the video again and like was just dancing, and I posted it on socials, and like that's where I wanted to see like what my mutuals thought about it, you know, what were people saying, and this is where I saw actually the initial critiques about the video. And I was kind of shocked when I realized that the video that I saw in my head was so closely matched to the one that they actually produced, because I didn't imagine fat people in the video either. Even as a fat person, I didn't imagine fat people being celebrated or welcomed in that environment. This revelation made me ask myself a ton of questions that I don't know if I have like all the answers to yet. One was like, what does my own erasure of fat people mean about my feelings around fat representation in popular culture? How do I dismantle my own internalized fat phobia and anti-fatness as a fat person? Did I feel welcomed or desired in the queer settings that I had so desperately craved to be a part of for so long if I couldn't imagine myself in a fantasy one? Finally, like, where do I even start to like dismantle some of this stuff for myself? All of this made me want to learn more about why music videos are important, not only to me, but to other fat and queer people specifically. For context, let me give you a little short history lesson on censorship in Hollywood, and then I'll tell you about how those relate to like the Rush music video and fat and queer representation. So follow me. I want to take this back all the way to July 1934, which is pretty spooky because a black person going back in time to anything that's not like 2010.
Oh, jump scare.
In 1922, the Hollywood film industry established the Motion Picture Producers and Distributors of America, popularly known as the Hays Office, whose mission was to control the moral content of film production. July 1934 is important because this is when the American Hays Code system was created for film. And now this is exactly not 89 to like, depending on when this video comes up, it's like 89 to 90 years from exactly when the Rush music video dropped. And like, that's not girl math. Like I pulled out my calculator, like it's for real. The Hays Code was named after William H. Hays, who was the president of the MPPDA office at the time. The Hays Code was this self-imposed industry set of guidelines for all motion pictures that were released between 1934 and 1968. The Hays Code prohibited profanity, suggestive nudity, graphic or realistic violence, sexual persuasion. It had rules around the use of crime, costume, dance, religion, national sentiment, and morality. And according to the code, even within the limits of pure love or realistic love, certain facts have been regarded as outside the limits of safe presentation. So basically, this means we had a whole lot of married couples sleeping in separate beds for at least 20 years. No movie could be shown in a main theater in the country if it did not have the seal of purity from the Production Code Administration, or PCA, with Joseph Byrne at the helm. So why might the Hays Code exist? Like, why would Hollywood create these self-regulations for the films that they produced like themselves? And of course, the short answer is money. It's money. That's it. It's money. The long answer is still money, but I'll read you what I found in research. One reason related to aesthetics and narrative, and therefore economic concerns, was to get around the intervention of municipal and state censorship boards, which were in the habit of butchering films according to their whims. Thus, by censoring their own films in advance, self-censorship, the studios would be able to prevent a lot of arbitrary cuts by these boards. A second and much more important reason was strictly financial in nature, to prevent the establishment of the federal censorship boards that numerous municipal boards and conservative religious groups were lobbying for. In other words, self-regulation was a way of preventing state intervention in the film industry, which would have very probably have led to the investigation into potential breaches of U.S. antitrust laws, given the monopolistic and No, I tried to do the little audiobook thing for y'all, but I don't even know how to say this word. Oligopolistic.
Oligopolistic.
What is it again?
Oligopolistic.
Agapolistic.
Oligopolistic.
Ag- Agapolistic.
Oligopolistic.
What even is that? Anyways, practices of the big, vertically integrated Hollywood companies that controlled the film production process from beginning to end, with a stranglehold on all three branches of the business: production, distribution, and exhibition. The objective of the Hayes office, with full complicity of the studios, was therefore to ensure that films were clean, healthy, inoffensive, happy, apolitical, morally just, suitable for all audiences, that they would be released in any country in the world without offending the audience, and above all, they would be able to secure the best possible box office returns. That mean green. Long story short, studios played censor before the censors could. It was like pre-chewing your food before somebody else could take a bite. Now, I can only imagine what good old Joey and Willie thought was clean, healthy, inoffensive, happy, and morally just in the 1930s. The Hayes office and studios teamed up to basically make films as universally digestible as like a Caesar salad. I can take a wild guess that the Rush music video wouldn't have made it off of a paper napkin if it was written on it. While the Hays Code system ended in 1968, for the system that we have today, the ideals still influence the industry and even audiences. In fact, we know that producers often alter movies to secure ratings that they want, which can often have significant box office implications. Directors will create director's cuts that usually will be more adult in category. Now, if Beyonce is right, which she always is, and whoever controls the media controls the mind, we have these two white men and more basically getting to decide what's in the media. How does that affect our own ideals on what family is? Who is deserving of love? What's beautiful? And who is deserving of nothing at all? Now, what does Hollywood's old self-censorship guidelines have to do with Miss Troye Pocket Rocket Gun Sivan? Side note, Pocket Rocket Gun has to be the best line of the song, like, or even like the album entirely. Like, who thinks of a body part as a pocket rocket gun? The rent was past due for the songwriters. Like, it was past due. They had one shot.
Because I'm open and available, bitch. I prefer chocolate. Thank you.
So when we're considering the Rush music video and who is or is not represented in this queer utopia, we have to think about who is writing the checks to even make a video like this happen, and who benefits the most for it being on screen. We can see the lingering influence of the Hays Code not only in the film industry, but also in the music industry. In Experiencing Music Videos, Aesthetic and Cultural Context, Carol Vanellis writes about the erasure of queer people in music videos in 2003. It is almost as if music videos still operate within the American Hays Code system for film. Homosexuality does not exist. Gay imagery is more heavily censored in music videos than film or broadcast television. In part, advertisers and stations believe music videos are intended for a younger audience that needs to be protected. Because videos are just commercials, this line of thinking goes, there's no reason not to edit them. Advertisers are already anxious about what might be considered as threatening content in popular music, and they therefore try to yield greater control over the image. There is a substantial body of tapes with gay imagery, but these tapes have been heavily censored or rejected from playlists, circulating underground instead. Now, this book was written 20 years ago, and we can see a clear progression in the lack of gay imagery in music videos from then and now, with a bunch of artists like Kid Ken, Sam Smith, Saucy Santana, Monet Exchange, Bob the Drag Queen. But we still have gatekeepers in the music industry, similar to the Hays office, that greenlight what gets shown to the public. We know from artist testimonies throughout the years that the music industry is extremely predatory to artists, and most of them never even touch the amount of money or power that they create for these record labels that they work for. In an interview, Lisa Left Eye Lopez from TLC breaks down how the group sold 10 million albums in the late 90s, one of the biggest girl groups to ever girl group, and still have little to no money to show for all of their hard work once it was all done. Fast forward 20 years, artists like Ray lament about the outright injustice artists face in the music industry, stating that songwriters are giving little to no royalties on the records that they write. Their pen, their paper, their words, no money? Like, I picture music industry executives sitting atop the Iron Throne, but instead of the throne being made out of swords, they're made out of the pens of all the artists that they've taken advantage of over the years. In an Instagram post, Troye writes, "It's hard to get good music video budgets these days because people say music videos don't matter, but you guys secured the bag for the next one because you like the Rush music video so much. Thank you." I would like to personally say you're welcome to Troye because whether it be from my own enjoyment or the research for this video, I've definitely pushed those Rush music videos views up. So, you know, break me off a little piece. I gotta pay my student loans. So you have to wonder, who are the people that Troye is referring to in the post? And my guess is not the fans, but record label executives that fund projects like Rush. Troye helps me add a little bit more context to my own point that if music video executives don't believe that the product is going to make the money, they're not going to fund the product. Fat people are not going to make the money, and that's the truth. So why would they create art with them in it? But anti-fatness is not a Troye Sivan or even his record label's issue, but is embedded in the framework of our society. Weight stigma is discrimination towards people based off of their weight and body size. Weight stigma has been proven to cause psychological and physiological harms, including disordered eating, depression, and elevated stress levels. Evidence shows that up to 42% of adults living with overweight or obesity experience weight bias, which leads to internalized feelings of weight stigmatization. In this article, researchers analyze YouTube comments and how anonymous users verbally attack fat people. Such comments could lead to depression, which could subsequently promote unhealthy eating behaviors, i.e. binge eating, and further weight gain. Findings from this study show that a plethora of our own medical professionals holds implicit or explicit weight bias attitudes towards people with obesity. So when Sivan says that him or his team didn't think about fat people and their representation in the Rush music video, that makes sense. Hell, anti-fatness is so pervasive that I didn't even think that fat people should be in the Rush music video, and I'm fat and gay. And it's like, girl, I would have loved to see someone that looks like me in the Rush music video and represented there, you know, or you could just, you know, somebody could cast me in the, you could cast me in the next one. This exclusion isn't an isolated situation with the Rush video and Troye, but a long nuanced history of fat people being othered. But the issue with Rush is we know exactly what kind of diversity Troye and team thought about when they were creating the video. We know that the black person at the end of the video with this like glitter motif and the spotlight on them is supposed to mean, you know, come one, come all. Like everyone is welcome in Ba Sing Se. It's almost like a DEI strategic product placement, because if the cast was all white, we knew that that wouldn't have cut it. People would have been outraged that there was like no racial diversity at all. Twitter would have canceled Troye, and then the record label wouldn't have been able to make what? Money. And unfortunately, this is a damned if you do, damned if you don't kind of situation. I've been writing and researching this script for months now, so I can only exact months. It's taken me months. So I can't even imagine all the blood, sweat, and tears put into a video like Rush, for it to only be torn down by the community that it's supposed to celebrate, which I think makes it difficult for artists to create art because they have to think about everyone and every single identity being included, and that's just not really realistic. Queer people deserve a plethora of art that showcases the range of our uniqueness and individuality. We shouldn't have to hyper focus on media that feels like home to us, because we should have more art that explores our ever-changing lived experiences. And it isn't lost on me that if there was a fat person and only like one fat person in Rush, then my video probably would have been about tokenism in the queer community and in media. If there had been no BIPOC in the video, then I would have been probably talking about racial inequality in the queer community. And in that, I do feel bad for Sivan, because I know she's just a girl trying to make some cool music, do her little 2-1-2 step, and, you know, go about her business. And, you know, she can only create art based off of her lived experiences and the people that are around her. Now, I don't feel too bad for her. Like, I mean, she is young, rich, white, and a skinny legend. Like, she's not suffering too bad. I think that the conversation around the lack of body diversity in Rush started because as queer people, we yearn to see authentic and vibrant images of ourselves reflected and celebrated on screen. Disclosure is a documentary that I reference a lot. I think it showcases so many of the negative stereotypes about the queer and trans community that have been produced since like film started. And I believe we are truly just now entering like a queer renaissance where we're seeing so many of our stories told everywhere. So many children are entering the world and are able to search on the internet and see a long list of queer people telling queer stories. Having major artists like Beyonce and Madonna acknowledge and celebrate how much queer culture contributes not only to their art, but to art on a global level is amazing to witness. I would argue that this is one of the best times to be an openly queer person. I mean, at least like in the States, and even that depends on what state you're in. But we are not seeing enough of the intersection between queerness and fatness. Authors like Deshaun Harrison show us that body positive media representation alone isn't fat liberation. In Flaunting Fat, Sex with the Lights On, Jenny Lee talks about the closet as it relates to fat queer people's bodies. It is important not only for this conversation, but for abolitionists altogether. In the essay, Lee talks about how fat people are often forced into a closet through diet culture, specifically in the same way that people who are deemed or self-identify as sexually deviant often are. Diet culture imprisons fat bodies, by which I mean that diet culture is the closet. It confines them to a cell, one that is inescapable, with the intent to keep fatness hidden, unseen, behind bars. As String stated, it is not about health, but rather the repulsiveness assigned to fatness by others. For this reason, fat liberation is an abolitionist affair. Abolition is a queer affair. Queerness is a fat affair. Liberation for each of them is linked. We need not only look to media, but our law and policy makers to help us create an environment where future generations don't have to grow up in the margins of our society because of their body size. Thinking back to like those questions that were like piling up in my head when I was initially thinking about creating this video and where to start, I think that this is the best place I know how to start my own work around dismantling anti-fatness and fat phobia within myself and within society. And maybe it could even help you on your journey as well. I've been talking for a long time. Thanks so much for watching. The sun is going down. It's about to get dark. Go, I don't know, read something, I guess. Shout out to my coworker who gave me this mug. Cheers. Who's your favorite brat? I have to say that Jade is my favorite brat. She's my favorite brat. Say this. Jade is my favorite brat because I always had girl cousins, and they're all black, and so they always were Sasha. So I could never really be Sasha. No one wanted to be Chloe. Like Yasmin, we love Yasmin. She's that girl. But it's really like I couldn't be Yasmin. So Jay was really my girl. Like I loved her like Boo Boo Kitty. But like Jay, she's my girl. Am I even pointing at her? Look at her. Gorgeous. She's really that girl. Is it gonna focus? She's really that girl. Anyways. Ciao.